the special counsel's office responds to accusations that it unlawfully obtained thousands of private emails sent by the Trump transition team.
My people are very upset about it. I can't imagine there's anything on them, frankly, because, as we said, there's no collusion. No, I'm not. No.
GOP lawmakers are confident they'll pass tax reform this week.
It's a historic moment, and we're excited to be here.
President Trump said McCain was returning home to Arizona as he battles side effects of brain cancer treatment, but that he'll come back to D.C. if they need him.
He's going through a very tough time. There's no question about it. But he will come back if we need his vote.
Electricity restored just before midnight after a massive power outage brought Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta to a complete standstill. Officials blaming a fire. They say it broke out in an underground electrical facility.
The daily average for the week, the last 7 days, is about 1,300.
1,300?
Across
1,300 people across the southwest border.
Who could actually sing.
Kind
How
of patterned
beautiful
after
is that?
Sinatra.
Look at this. It's green and red.
If our set doesn't remind you, you have 1 week to finish your Christmas shopping. I don't know what is.
You could put a news alert.
I think people, that's called a calendar.
Well, listen, my bet is, we were talking before the show with some of my friends downstairs.
Right.
They don't like you.
I know.
You're not
I heard. I tried to get a talk.
We were doing Christmas cards all weekend long, wrapping presents. My family's in South Carolina, so I have to ship all my gifts. So that's what I was doing
By the way,
Saturday
she said
night.
ship.
When you put the kids to bed, then you have time by yourself and the house is quiet, right? I stayed up till 5 a.m. on Saturday night.
Oh my goodness.
Doing all that stuff, and I was so happy. I loved every second
Here's
of
the
it.
good news, Ainsley. You know what I had?
What did you do?
We packed up all ours, too. I had my daughter Sally do it.
Did you really?
There you go.
See,
I watched.
See, Hayden's too young.
I know.
I have that to look forward to.
She's also my designated driver when needed.
All right,
Anyway,
speaking of holiday travel,
in addition to that,
yeah,
we got 1 week before Christmas, and everybody's going home and going places. You're going places. Listen to this. We got a Fox News alert. It's all about travel. And power is finally back on at the world's busiest airport after thousands of flights were canceled.
Todd Pyro joins us now with the latest on what is happening at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Todd?
This is bad, guys. The outage leaving passengers stranded in dark terminals, forcing multiple airlines to cancel thousands of outgoing and incoming flights. Nearly 100 planes sitting on the tarmac with people waiting on board for hours.
The lights flickered once. That was really scary, but we were like, hopefully nothing happens. And then they flickered again, and they didn't come back.
I literally spent a whole 7 hours on an airplane without food or water.
We have to go through the tunnels that are pitch black. It's scary.
It started around 1 yesterday afternoon. Atlanta's mayor saying an electrical fire caused the outage. The lights did not come back on until around midnight. That's more than 11 hours later. Get this, the airport's Chick-fil-A, typically closed on Sunday for religious reasons, came to the rescue, handing out 2,000 meals to stranded passengers. How awesome is that? Georgia Power sending a statement saying an electrical fire may have caused the outage, although it's still under investigation. Thousands of people, though, remain stranded at the airport. Still unclear when they'll be able to catch their flights. And like Steve said at the top, not a good thing to have happen 1 week before Christmas.
Right.
Back to you.
And that's where you find you sleep on the floor, you grab your carry-on baggage, and you make a bed.
You're so frustrated. Oh.
Right.
No kidding. And keep in mind, thank you very much, Todd, because they couldn't prepare any food. Apparently, when the lights finally went on, they took in 5,000 meals because people were starving. People were stuck on that train. You know, it's so big. That airport is so big. You got to take the train. People were stuck there. They had to be lifted off by the fire department. And people were actually locked in the doors. You know, those doors that go around, electric. Couldn't get out.
Stuck in there. I called Delta last night to work on some flights for Christmas, and they said, if you are not stranded, we're trying to deal with Atlanta. If you're not stranded, call back tomorrow. That's what the automated search. So I hung up. I let the people deal with that. That is so frustrating. Has that ever happened to y'all?
Not like that. Meanwhile, 4 minutes after the top of the hour, what a week it's going to be on Capitol Hill. Think about it. Historic tax cuts and tax reform, that's one thing. The other thing we're looking at, too, is what's happening with the investigation into this Russian probe on the Mueller probe, and who's involved with what, and what are they up to. Today, we're going to see about Bruce Orr and his wife, and what their relationship is with Fusion GPS. And then Tuesday, it's Andy McCabe, the former acting, now deputy FBI director, and his role in the investigation or lack thereof of President Trump.
All right, today the senators, they want to know this. They want to know about his wife. His wife was working for Fusion GPS. Her name is Nellie Orr. He was also having private undisclosed meetings with Fusion GPS while his wife was working there, and he's working for the DOJ investigating the president. He even sat down during the campaign with Christopher Steele and had a conversation with him.
Sure, and the curious thing about Bruce Orr, who we're talking about, whose wife Nellie worked for Fusion GPS, is there are a number of Republican members of Congress who feel that Peter, there's Mr. Orr right there, the other guy, the guy who had the girlfriend, Peter Strzok, they feel that he used the dossier to get a FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was one of the assistants during the Trump transition. So they're going to be asking him all those questions about that. And then with Andrew McCabe, keep in mind, he is still so high-ranking at the FBI, he was on the short list to be the new director. So there he is right there. He's also the guy whose wife ran for state senate down in the Commonwealth of Virginia, wound up with $600,000 or $700,000 from Clinton-aligned supporters and stuff like that. There are a lot of questions he's got, just like Bruce Orr, but we're not going to hear the answers on camera because they're going to both be behind closed doors.
But I hope we do get an indication, because last week was the non-answer week. When asked, do you know the answer? Was the Fusion GPS dossier used to unmask or use as evidence for the FISA court in order to unmask? I know the answer, but I'm not telling you.
Because of the IG.
Rod Rosenstein. But legislatively, there's nothing stopping him from answering that question. The IG is put there for Congress. Congress is asking you a question. You could answer the question.
That's what is so frustrating, Brian. People at home, they're watching, they're saying, oh, it's another hearing, another hearing. They're going to say, I plead the fifth, or they're going to say, I'm not allowed to answer that, or they're going to say, I know the answer, I can't answer it. It's just like we're running around in circles.
Well, if they can't answer those questions, they should not be at the FBI. I mean, think about it. If they ask Bruce Orr a question about what he did regarding the dossier, meeting with Chris Steele, and he doesn't answer, it's like, well, what do you have to hide? Maybe you shouldn't just still be at the FBI.
People are wondering why he is still there, why he was just demoted.
Well, those text messages, they refer to Andy and a plan, a possible
Peter Strzok
plan.
And Lisa Page.
August 15th, 2016, and they talk about what happens, essentially, to paraphrase, if Trump wins. They go, well, we have an insurance policy, like you have an insurance policy if you die before you're 40, and they referred to Andy, and I believe it's him. So let's see if he has an answer to that question, or he could say, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. People want to know, the House wants to know, does he have a connection with this guy, the Strzok guy, and did he know that that Orr was in collusion, or did know these, or had these meetings with Fusion GPS? What did he know? What did Andrew McCabe know?
Will we ever know?
Probably not.
Also yesterday, Eric Holder, former Attorney General of the United States, remember he's the only AG who was ever held in contempt of Congress, he tweeted this out. Absolute red line. The firing of Bob Mueller or crippling the special counsel's office, if removed or meaningfully tampered with, there must be mass, popular, peaceful support of both. The American people must be seen and heard. They will ultimately be determinative. And then Walt Schaub, former Obama ethics czar, said this.
He said, this weekend I'm stocking up on portable phone chargers, warm clothes, and gear needed for when we take the streets. I'm concerned the assault on the rule of law is coming over the holidays when we're distracted. It'll be a defining moment for the Republic.
So you know what this is based on? A non-story. This woman, Congresswoman Spire, says that they got word that before Christmas, the president's going to make a major speech, fire Robert Mueller, and declare all the investigations over. It never happened. It's never been verified. Now, nothing coming from the White House, not even rumor, not even word on the street. This is a congresswoman who says this. And then every Sunday show, except for Chris Wallace's, leads with, what happens if they fire Robert Mueller? Well, it turns out if they pick up the phone and call the White House, it has not even been discussed. They never brought it up. It's a non-story started by a woman who's not tapped into the White House, and then everyone feeds on it as if they're all reading from the same script.
President says it's more fake news. I'm not firing Robert Mueller. Listen.
Sad to see that. So my people were very upset about it. I can't imagine there's anything on him, frankly, because, as we said, there's no collusion. There's no collusion whatsoever. But A lot of lawyers thought that was pretty sad. No, I'm not.
Meanwhile, you've got a bunch of people who had been working on the president's transition team. They're upset that they say Robert Mueller illegally got a bunch of email. He says he followed the law. Nonetheless, the sooner they get the investigation over, the better for the White House. People inside the White House feel he's not going to fire Robert Mueller.
And just so you know, when they had the transition, they were given the computers and everything during the transition. They said, thank you very much. Now, all of a sudden, to this point, if Robert Mueller needed somebody's email, he would say, I need somebody's email, and they would give it to him. So now, all of a sudden, they go to the GSA, and they say, hey, do me a favor, give me everybody's. And the GSA does without checking with the Trump administration. They say, wait a second, you just can't grab all the transitions. So if Ivanka emailed and said, don't forget to pick up such and such milk before soccer practice, that's all in Robert Mueller's?
But the problem is it's a government database. They're all government emails. So the government's entitled to it, and he's got an investigation, and the GSA said, okay.
Well, the Trump people said, no, that's not what the assurances. No, they don't like it, but they even got assurances that wasn't the case.
All right. Let us know what you think about that. We were talking about it this weekend with some friends. The Strzok guy, not very smart. If he's going to have an affair, he's doing that on government emails.
He's an FBI guy. He should know.
Right. All right. More headlines this morning. A fallen hero is remembered as loved ones line the streets to say goodbye. San Diego firefighter Corey Iverson. He died battling that massive Thomas wildfire. The procession of first responders covering nearly 200 miles. He leaves behind a 2-year-old daughter. You see her there, and a pregnant wife. There is a GoFundMe page. It's been started for his family. Look at that. They've already raised more than $400,000. That's wonderful. Well, we now know a U.S. soldier killed in an ambush by ISIS-affiliated fighters in Niger fought until the very end. 2 senior defense officials tell Fox News Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was not executed or captured during the October attack, as previously reports suggested. The military investigation found the 25-year-old was shot nearly 18 times. 3 other American soldiers, including 2 Green Berets, died also in that attack. Vladimir Putin praising President Trump for providing the intel that prevented a terror attack in St. Petersburg. The Russian president calling our commander-in-chief after the CIA tipped Russian officials off. The White House says President Trump was pleased to help, adding, quote, both leaders agreed that this serves as an example of the positive things that can occur when our countries work together. It is the second time the 2 leaders have spoken by phone since Thursday. And those are your headlines.
Well, all right. Nice job, Ainsley. 13 minutes after the hour, Jane Fonda spending thousands to make sure Republican Congressman Darrell Issa is out of a job. His response?
When Hanoi Jane puts $100,000 in to defeat you, I have so little respect for her after she betrayed our country.
Most of America feels the same way, and he wasn't done. We'll give you more.
All right, welcome back. With all this talk of investigations, it's hard to keep track of who's who, so we're going to break down all the key players you need to know in the FBI and the DOJ's presidential Russia probe as officials start testifying later today. Here to investigate the investigators, former CIA officer Buck Sexton. Buck, good morning to you.
Good to see you.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. You got folks at the FBI and the DOJ, right?
Absolutely. And so what's happening right now is people are beginning to see that there's a nexus of these different figures that were involved in key nodes of both the Hillary Clinton email investigation and then also the Russia collusion probe. And by the way, a lot of Democrat donors, Democrat-tied individuals here.
Andrew McCabe, let's start with him. In fact, his wife ran for Congress in Virginia, state Congress, as a Democrat.
That's right. Close relationship with Terry McAuliffe, whom we all know from his political career. And then you also have him appearing in the texts that have been released from Strzok. And it's believed, now we haven't confirmed this yet, which is why his testimony will be so interesting, that he's the Andy referred to by a couple of other FBI folks as the office that they were discussing the insurance policy in, the anti-Trump insurance policy, which no one knows what that means yet, but people have some ideas.
Then here's Peter Strzok. He's the one who had the girlfriend Lisa Page, and this is a guy who had those text messages talking about Andy's office.
Right, and he said that President Trump is loathsome, and there's been a lot of distraction tactics over this one, because what you see is that he's allowed to say bad things about the president. No one denies that. Yeah. Should he say it on government property? No, that's a dumb thing to do. I used to work for the government. I would never have done that. That's not smart. However, when he talks about the anti-Trump insurance policy and involving other people in the FBI, given that he was involved in Hillary's emails, that he was involved in the Russia probe, that's concerning stuff.
So the insurance policy could have been the dossier, which some people feel that Peter Strzok might have used before a FISA court to let them start spying on the Trump campaign. Okay, so Nellie Orr is married to Bruce Orr. He was a high-ranking official at the DOJ until he was demoted.
Right, and at what point do we start to see here that the coincidence is just too great? Here you have a senior DOJ person.
And this is Andrew Weissman right here.
Andrew Weissman here, senior DOJ person who is praising Sally Yates. So this is really just politicization that we're concerned about at this point. He doesn't have as direct a tie to Fusion GPS, but you have Bruce Orr over here, and Orr is a guy who met with the someone from Fusion GPS on more than one occasion, I believe, and met with Christopher Steele, who put together the dossier. So why would someone from DOJ be holding those meetings? And by the way, his wife worked for them. The coincidences are piling up way too high.
There are a lot of them. So if these FBI and DOJ people go in front of Congress and they say, I can't answer that, that looks bad, right?
It looks bad. You're going to see.
I get a feeling they got an answer for everything, though.
I mean, they have a lot of information that people want. The question is, where do they draw the line between what is classified that they are going to say they can't share in a certain forum versus what is pleading the fifth? We'll have to see.
We will indeed. All right, Buck, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, meanwhile, there are hundreds of arrests at the southern border every day. Brian actually went down there last week to talk firsthand with the agents keeping us safe. He's going to tell us what he found out coming up next.
We have some quick headlines for you. 2 ISIS terrorists caught on camera storming a packed Christian church in Pakistan with rifles and explosive vests. 9 people were killed, more than 50 injured when one detonated inside. A security guard shooting one of the gunmen before he could get inside where about 400 people were worshiping. And the worldwide effort to nullify President Trump's historic Jerusalem decision is intensifying today. The United Nations Security Council is expected to vote on a measure from Egypt that would void the declaration of an ancient city as Israel's capital. But the United States is expected to veto that. If it does happen, the proposal might go to the UN General Assembly.
Also, last week we showed you Brian's exclusive interview with the Department of Homeland Security brand new chief, Kirstjen Nielsen.
But why did she choose to go to that area of the border within days of her confirmation, we asked Brian.
All right. So now, Brian Kilmeade reporting for Judy. I asked the Border Patrol agents about what is like their day in and day out from when it started, when President Trump started, to where we are today. Here's what they had to say.
Yeah, 400 a day here across the southwest border. The daily average for the week, the last 7 days, is about 1,300.
1,300.
Those astonishing numbers are the reason why newly confirmed Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen spent her first week meeting with the Customs and Border Patrol agents in the Rio Grande Valley sector.
We've heard from the frontline operators that this is where we need the wall. So I wanted to come and see for myself in terms of prioritization why it was important to build here.
This is the most active sector in the Border Patrol right now amongst the 9 across the southwest border. More apprehensions and arrests are done here, more seizures are done here, and the problem with unaccompanied children and family units is more acute here than it is anywhere else on the border.
Part of the issue, the border wall in this area is not a straight wall. There are gaps in it. Sometimes it's due to the terrain or natural barriers, and sometimes it's other factors.
This is the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge. We cannot build roads. It has limitations to law enforcement, but it does not have limitations to the criminal organizations.
Frustrating, right?
Very frustrating.
We tend to have the discussion about the wall with respect to illegal immigration problem, but you can't forget it's criminals, it's traffickers, it's smugglers, it's special interest aliens, potentially terrorists. It's all the same pathways.
A half mile through this bollard fencing is Mexico, and currently over 400 people are trying to get through any given day, some successfully. How does that number come down again? Congress has to act.
They watch what's happening in Congress, they watch what's happening, it's part of our national conversation. They're watching everything we do and learning from it, finding out how to exploit it.
The numbers don't lie.
Chief, let's take a look at this. In January 25th, the new administration takes over. The rhetoric is strong, and what is the result in terms of crossings?
So this is the number of individual family units and unaccompanied children that are arrested here in the Rio Grande Valley during those time frames.
Look at the drop, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's 45-year low in May.
And then what happens?
So the calculation starts to change. Since May, these loopholes that exist in current law are now being re-exploited.
And the numbers go up again.
So the consequences matter, and that's a demonstration of it.
And it's not just facts and figures, it's what the actual border agents are experiencing as well.
You talk about trends. What did you see in January of this year, and what are you seeing now?
Trends, they were starting in January, things kind of calmed down, but they've kind of re-escalated again, and we've started seeing an increase of more people coming in and just continuing to enter.
We are seeing an upscale in, like I said, the narcotics, the hard narcotics. That's gone up a lot.
We know how the White House wants to fix that.
We are building a wall on the southern border, which is absolutely necessary.
And what did the president tell you when you got the job?
Build a wall. Protect our country.
But what do the men and women of CPB think?
If someone could build a barrier, would that help?
I mean, somebody could build a barrier, easier said than done, but of course it'd help out.
A wall works where we use it. We put fences and walls around things that we want to protect in this country. Our homes, our communities, parks, individual factories. We put fences around them because they work.
And for those who work the border, this is not just a job, it's a mission.
Definitely, we know for the majority of the folks here, they want to be safe. The more impact that we can have on illegal immigration, the better for them because they feel safe.
The laws are the laws, so we're not discriminating or being prejudiced towards any particular race or ethnicity. We're just doing our job.
That's really interesting. So, Brian, right after he was inaugurated, the number of people who did the illegal crossings went way down. Now it's coming back. Is that because the wall hasn't been built yet?
It is. And the fact is, right now, when you get captured, they're still putting you into the system. Mm-hmm. They say, okay, 3 weeks, here's your ticket, come back. They don't come back.
Ever.
So what happens is, it's almost as if all these gangs and these criminals and these people, sometimes families want to get caught. It's almost as if they have C-SPAN. In Mexico, in Central America. They know exactly what the rhetoric is. And when it's rhetoric, they'll look out because they don't want to get caught. But when you tell people there's going to be no ramifications if you're caught here, let alone if you can get here, then they don't worry about it. They're going to come in, they're going to be all the illegals. So you have to get more courts, you have to have bigger detainment centers, and you got to let them know you're going right back immediately. And most of them are not Mexicans. It goes central and south. Mm-hmm. Mexico is not the issue. They go through Mexico, but it's not Mexicans.
So what surprised you the most?
The biggest surprise is the way that they don't want to get caught. If you tell them, if you turn off the magnet, people won't take the risk.
The jobs.
They don't take the jobs. And if they do get caught, if they know they're going back, they're not going to be able to execute. They're not going to be able to say, I'm going to get this family over here safely. I'm not going to be able to get these drugs over here safely. Also, fentanyl. If you want to stop fentanyl, it's a synthetic drug that's killing our country and destroying our youth. You got to stop it at the border. That's real. If you think this is President Trump or President Obama, it's not. You got to go talk to the border agents. They are desperate for some backup. They feel the support, but they haven't seen it in legislation. That's why it's got to happen this week. They got to get their $1.8 billion to begin the Rio Grande sector. It's got 54 miles of fence. It needs 110, and they need more border guys and border women.
Well, it was great that you went down there to show us firsthand what it's like.
Yeah, we'll show it again a little bit later, but they actually want Americans to speak up and sound off. It is not anti-Hispanic or anti any group. It is just about American security.
Safe. Yeah. Keeping America safe. You know what, Brian? It's the same story. That same sentiment, what you're saying, it's the same story we've been reporting in our profession for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And nothing's being done. Something has to change.
Right. There has to be a will, because at one point we all agreed they needed more border security. Suddenly now we don't all agree on that.
That's right. All right. Well, in just a few hours, good job, by the way. In just a few hours, President Trump will unveil his new national security strategy. One of the men who helped write it, he is live with the America First message.
Really? I don't. Yellow isn't strong. It isn't a strong color for pants.
Okay, Brian.
I know.
I'm wearing them tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm sure on Google we can find you some.
I'm
find
sure
some
there's
yellow.
some right
They're
now.
velvet pants, too.
Change colors when you brush them, right?
That's right.
Up and down.
Direction of the felt. One of the things that I always did from the time the children were small was I stood at the bottom of the stairs with my video camera, and we've played this before. You can actually see that's Peter Doocy. All the
Look at that. I had that nightgown.
These are the Doocy kids
That
running
is so
down
cute.
to Santa. There's Sally. She graduated.
Look at the Barbie
She's an
dream car.
Oh, and she has a flu in
Wow,
that
I want to be a relative at your place.
Me too. I
Just look
wanted
how
that
fast
car.
they go down those stairs. Look at these
Look
kids.
at that.
I would too if I got a Barbie car.
I know.
Look at them. Oh, that is
Do you do that every year?
We did. One year, a couple of years ago, we went down to Washington to visit Peter, and we were staying at a hotel. So we actually had him run down an escalator.
Oh, can you
I've got that
recreate
video.
that moment this year for us?
Yes.
With your kids?
In New Jersey.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
With a Barbie car, too.
We have stairs right there if the four of us want to recreate it.
That's right.
That was the best time. Do you remember? And you're trying, no one wakes up at the right time, the same time. We were all like pulling my
Oh, they
sister
had
out
to
of
wait
bed.
at the top of the stairs.
We did too.
They
And
wake
we were like,
everybody up.
Mom, come on. Hold on. I just need to brush my teeth. Dad, come on. Hold on. I need to set up
And then
the
they'd go
video
downstairs,
camera.
and then they'd go,
You'd
"Yep,
wait
he was
forever.
here.
Yes.
He was here.
Come on. Elise, get out of bed.
It is the most exciting time of the year.
The best
It is.
week on the calendar.
really is.
We would love to see some of your pictures. Email them to us, friends at Fox.
You know what's the best part now about being an adult and having children? It's that we get to watch our parents see the joy and love that their grandkids bring them. There's nothing better than that.
Right. I like to see what I get. I just want to make sure I get good presents.
You still run down the
yeah,
stairs.
I do. Yeah. And I just make sure there's receipts.
You push
in
your
the bag.
kids out of the way.
Exactly.
Brian, I can't
Those are
wait to
fun.
see more pictures of
Me
you this
too.
week.
Right. We're going to be in search.
That's great. You have the video. We got to pull out the Betamax.
That's right.
Got to find something.
Betamax.
All right. Yeah. We had the beta before we had the VHS.
Yeah.
Send us your pictures in. It's friends@foxnews.com. In the meantime, we're going to give you some more headlines. A brand new bombshell report reveals just how far the Obama administration was willing to go to keep the Iran nuclear deal from imploding. According to Politico, the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah was given a free pass on drug trafficking operations, even in the United States. Officials secretly throwing roadblocks at the DEA, derailing its efforts to track the group. Former Obama officials insist that it was all an effort to help stall Iran's nuclear program.
Yeah, right.
Republican Congressman Darrell Issa is now firing back at Jane Fonda after she donated $100,000 to help unseat him.
I have so little respect for her after she betrayed our country in Hanoi all those years ago and literally caused prisoners of war to be further punished. So if that's the best they can do is come out with somebody who should have been jailed instead of notarized, as celebritized, I'm okay.
Fonda earned the nickname Hanoi Jane after she visited North Vietnam during the war to protest. Other celebrities shelling out to turn ICE's California seat blue, including Bill Maher and Leonardo DiCaprio. A 4-year-old girl hailed a hero this morning. Isabella Nugent waking up to find her family's New York City apartment in flames. The child yelling fire to alert her sister and other relatives, getting them out of the building in time. The family losing everything in their charred home except the clothes on their back. There is a GoFundMe page set up already. Nearly $1,000 of its $15,000 goal has already been reached. So if you want to give to them, please do so. They need it. It is the perfect dance that is now going viral. 2 little girls making the most of their airport wait in Dallas, starting a dance-off with the grounds crew member through a terminal window.
Look at that.
Hey folks, for those of you waiting on flight 217 to Oklahoma City.
That is so cute. The guys on the ground are doing, that's so cute. The girls and crew member, of course, doing the airplane during their impromptu routine. You do the fish. You and Kathy do the fish. Now you need to add the airplane.
We could do that. Well, they probably were doing a lot of that in Atlanta yesterday. No electricity, nobody going anywhere.
He does this with the fishing rod, and then Kathy, he wheels around.
Giving away our secrets on the dance floor.
Yeah, it's really cute.
Okay, meanwhile, 19 minutes before the top of the hour, in just a few hours, President Trump will unveil his new national security strategy. One of the men who helped write it is live here next with an America First message.
Plus, a World War II vet brought to tears by the kindness of a stranger that's going to make your day, and his mission to pay it forward. Coming up.
I wanted to know that this is the best Christmas present I ever had.
Today, President Trump is set to unveil his national security strategy, the America First focus, expected to address terrorism, a tough economic stance on China, and strengthening our military.
Here with more on what we can expect is Michael Anton. He's the Deputy Assistant to the President for Strategic Communications on the U.S. National Security Council. And he joins us from the North Lawn. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So what are we going to hear from the President later today?
Well, you're going to hear a speech that explains the strategy. This is a document that's required by law. Every administration puts it out. I just want to say, though, that it's interesting this time. This is the first time, as far as we can tell, that even though this is required, it's the first time an administration's actually gotten it out in its first year. It shows the emphasis we've placed on it. It's also the first time a president has personally given a speech to the American people. Usually the document is either just delivered on paper or the National Security Advisor maybe introduces it, but the president really feels strongly that he wanted to do this himself. So the speech will explain the strategy. It will also demonstrate that the strategy, now that it's finished, it's not being operationalized tomorrow, that all year since taking office, he's been implementing this strategy in the foreign policy realm, and he'll go through some of the highlights of 2017 and look forward and explain what his goals are and what his plans are, how they also fit into the strategy.
So America First is not just a slogan to win an election or to spread the word or to just license. It is actually a strategy. And here's an example. We'll go over some of the principles. You say, first off, he's going to call for greater border security. He's been doing that from day one. He also says he wants to go for a principled realism. What do you mean by that?
Well, yes. Let me back up for just 1 second. The basis of the strategy is, first and fundamentally, it's the campaign speeches, the great foreign policy campaign speeches that the president gave in April of 2016 was the first major one. And it's also the major speeches that he gave this year in Riyadh, in Warsaw, in South Korea, at the United Nations, and so on. So principled realism, it's a way of saying that we stick to American principles. The strategy is fundamentally consistent with American principles. It's also realistic about what American power can achieve in the world. And there's a frank recognition that the president's critique that he gave during the campaign of the past couple decades of American foreign policy, that it tried to do too much. It overly defined what America's national interests were, and American foreign policy also tried to do things that, frankly, we've learned through hard experience were perhaps not achievable with American power. And so this is a kind of necessary reassessment of what our interests really are and what we really can and need to accomplish in the foreign policy realm.
All right, a reassessment. Is there anything new here, anything different? We've heard all of these themes on the campaign trail, and we've heard them over the last year, and that's great. Another reemphasis of these things that a lot of Americans want. But is there anything different here, Michael?
I don't think there's anything different from the president's campaign speeches and themes and his speeches in 2017, but there certainly is a lot different from past practice in foreign policy. And I'll just give three very quick but important examples. One is this strategy puts more emphasis, more focus, more detail on homeland security and border security than any national security strategy ever has. And it's obvious why, because that's such an enormous challenge the United States faces, and it was one of the great themes that the president ran and won on in 2016. A second is a greater emphasis on economic competition. National security strategies always talk about economics, but this one does so in more detail with greater focus, again, in keeping with the president's themes of fair and reciprocal trade that, unfortunately, American foreign policy had gotten away from. And I think the third is a recognition that the world is much more competitive than past national security strategies have admitted. They had taken one way to put it is a more hopeful view. Another way to put it is an unrealistic view that all the problems were over, all the great powers would get together and cooperate and solve problems. The fact is that there still is a realm of great power competition that the United States had not been competing in effectively, partly because it refused to recognize the competition, and this strategy does recognize that.
So, Michael, will this be the Trump doctrine?
I fully expect a lot of people will call it that, and I don't think any of us are going to object.
Right. A couple of things, too. Climate change, no longer a security threat as labeled by the administration. It's something in the environmental stewardship, you call it. The other thing is identify China as a strategic competitor. How does he identify Russia?
He identifies Russia the same way he's been talking about Russia all year. I don't know if any of you saw that the president had a phone call with President Putin yesterday, and we put out a statement about that phone call. It was a great example of cooperation in an area that, that cooperation almost certainly saved lives. We were able to help the Russians, inform the Russians of a possible terrorist attack in St. Petersburg. We still have areas of cooperation possible with Russia in Syria in fighting ISIS, all what's left of ISIS, I want to say, because one of the great accomplishments of 2017 in this administration is that ISIS's physical caliphate is almost completely gone. Right. And we also, there's areas where we're still competing with Russia, and this is a strategy that sees that clearly, prioritizes our interests, and will continue the president's policy of looking for areas of cooperation while being very clear-eyed about what our interests are and protecting them.
Well, the president's going to be giving the speech this afternoon. Folks will be able to see it live here on the channel. Michael Anton, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
All right, coming up, from her high heels to her Christmas decorations, the media loves to target that lady right there, our First Lady, Melania Trump. So why are her approval ratings soaring? The man who literally wrote the book on it, next.
Plus,
First Lady Melania Trump's popularity has skyrocketed since the beginning of her husband's administration.
you got a new Gallup poll. It shows she is liked by the majority of Americans. Her favorability rating climbing double digits. Now it's at 54% since January. Why is she becoming so popular?
Andy Oak is the author of Unusual for Their Time, On the Road with America's First Ladies, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And he joins us now. Hey, Andy, great to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here with you.
Why do you think this is? Her favorability numbers have jumped 17% since the beginning of the year.
Well, the simplest way I can explain it is the more we see of her, the more we like her. And I'm not surprised. I said back on the campaign trail, even before her husband did, that Melania Trump had the potential to be the next Jacqueline Kennedy. And we're seeing that come through in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I mean, you have a person who wants to be a mom first, but also happens to be a supermodel, and holds herself extremely well, very worldly, very cosmopolitan, very bright, speaks multiple languages, but yet she does not get a pass, as many first ladies do, from the media. I mean, the Daily Beast says, step inside Melania's nightmare before Christmas, mocking the fact that they didn't like the way she decorated the White House. Newsweek, why can't Melania Trump wear a coat properly? Really? First Lady troll for a signature draping look. I mean, for one thing, I don't see this, but where do people get off doing that? Why is that okay?
Well, the funny thing here is that she's against bullying, cyberbullying, any bullying of all kinds. And she's one of the most bullied first ladies in modern times, but she's taking the high road. When they came after her for her Christmas decorations, she just invited more people in. She decorated more Christmas cookies, held her head high, and she's coming out on top. I think the Christmas decorations were the last straw, and people are just fed up with attacking a woman for no good reason.
All right, Andy Oak, you're absolutely right. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, compared to Mrs. Bush or Mrs. Obama, she's getting a much harder time, but she'll be better for it. All right, meanwhile, thanks, Andy. Straight ahead, the truth is out there, and this brand new video proves it. The Pentagon admitting they secretly spent millions of our tax dollars to find UFOs, and guess who was behind it? That man. What a week it's going to be on Capitol Hill. Today, we're going to see about Bruce Orr and his wife and what their relationship is with Fusion GPS.
Orr is a guy who met with someone from Fusion GPS on more than one occasion. Why would someone from DOJ be holding those meetings? And by the way, his wife worked for them. The coincidences are piling up way too high.
Can you say flatly that Congress will pass this tax plan this week?
I can. It's a historic moment, and we're excited to be here.
I believe that the president wants to fire Special Counsel Mueller.
No, I'm not.
A massive power outage brought Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta to a complete standstill for 11 hours.
Two little girls making the most of their airport wait, starting a dance-off with the grounds crew member through a terminal window. So cute. The girls and crew member, of course, doing the airplane.
Transitioning the producer in our ear to make it seem like we know what we're talking
Meanwhile,
about.
Justin Bieber's not even 20, is he?
Oh, see, I like him. I know he's gone. I know he's had a lot of trouble, but I like him because he's in a Bible study in California with Hillsong Church, and I'm pulling for him.
Does he have a shirt on?
I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah. Don't know.
He doesn't really wear a shirt much, right?
Anyway, you know what today is? It's a week before Christmas, and thank you very much for spending the happiest 2 weeks in the calendar with us.
Get the cards out, the presents wrapped, lots to do, but try not to get too stressed. Remember the reason for the season. Don't get too stressed. Try to enjoy every single second of it.
That's right. But I tell you what, right now we're going to start this hour with some news, and the power is back on at the world's busiest airport. How many of those folks were actually traveling somewhere for Christmas? Thousands, 1,100 flights were canceled, leaving thousands of passengers stranded in the dark for a very long time.
Jonathan Siri joins us now live at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport with the latest. I was just saying, don't be too stressed unless you're in the airport. That is a stressful situation, Jonathan, but glad the lights are back on.
Exactly, Ainsley, Steve, and Brian. You can see the lights back on behind me, and also the lines beginning to form as people return to the airport to get on their newly rebooked flight. Add that to the normally busy holiday travel season already underway. The power was restored nearly 11 hours after it went out. Now, during the outage, jetways could not be wheeled out to planes to allow passengers to board and disembark. Baggage conveyors didn't work, so people had to wait long periods of time to be reunited with their luggage. Airport train systems were down, and so were the escalators. Travelers described the scene.
Nothing happens, and then they flickered again, and they didn't come back.
I literally spent a whole 7 hours on an airplane without food or water.
We have to go through the tunnels that are pitch black. It's scary.
The FAA issued a nationwide ground stop for flights headed to ATL, meaning planes were ordered to stay on the ground at their departure airports. For planes already in the sky, many of them were diverted. The power outage affected all airlines here at this airport, including Atlanta-based Delta, which canceled nearly 1,000 flights on Sunday. Now, today, the airline has scaled that back, canceling only 300 flights, most of them inbound flights early this morning. The airport is rapidly returning to normal, but again, passengers can expect long lines at ticket counters and baggage claims, so get here with plenty of time to spare. And then as far as what caused this outage, Georgia Power says it was an electrical fire in an underground station. It didn't injure anyone. Firefighters got the flames under control, but not before they spread to other substations, affecting redundant backup systems servicing this airport. Back to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Great. Hopefully things will get better and people will be back on flights. Meanwhile, 4 minutes after the top of the hour, it's going to be a big week. Not only for tax reform, it's going to be a big week in terms of the investigation and who is actually doing the investigating of the Trump team and possible collusion. First off, there's going to be Bruce Orr today. Tomorrow is going to be Andy McCabe. But Bruce Orr is going to be in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee when it was exposed that Bruce Orr's wife works for Fusion GPS and that he met with Fusion GPS in 2016. That was discovered by Devin Nunes on the House side.
That's crazy. So he was investigating President Trump, who was then, this was after he was investigating the president after he was inaugurated to find out if there was any Russia collusion. Turns out when you look at his history, he's married to a lady who works for Fusion GPS, who paid money to get the dirty dossier. He also met with Christopher Steele, who was responsible for penning the dirty dossier.
Sure. And so then, so he's at the Department of Justice. He's going to be behind closed doors today.
That's
his wife, Nellie. She was a Russian expert at Fusion GPS. Doesn't that sound convenient? Meanwhile, tomorrow, the Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, is going to be testifying before the House Intel Committee. Keep in mind, he was supposed to talk to them last week, but at the last minute, after the news about the Orr family popped out, he canceled, said it was a scheduling problem. But there are a number of Republicans who believed he wanted to avoid any questions about the Orrs. Well, apparently by now they figured out some answers, and he will appear today to answer some tough questions, because to a lot of Republicans, it does appear that going back over a year, the FBI and the DOJ went soft on Hillary Clinton and her private email server and hard on President Trump now regarding Russian collusion.
And when it comes to Orr, Ainsley, they actually believe that they met during the. Devin Nunes says, we believe that Orr met with Christopher Steele during the 2016 campaign, not even before the election was actually won. And you just go back to the word Andy's name was brought up with these Linda Page and with this Peter Strzok. When they're having these text messages back and forth, they talk about a meeting with Andy, at which time an insurance policy, just in case Donald Trump wins, they evidently have a plan. What are they talking about? That'll be brought up. My concern is that Andy, if it is indeed him, has a lot of time to come up with a story that might seem plausible, and as an FBI agent, might be lining up people to back it up.
That's right. Yeah. So if this guy Orr, if he's meeting with Christopher Steele during the campaign, and his wife is working for Fusion GPS, when they ask him at the DOJ to be a part of this Russian collusion investigation, he should have said, "I can't. I need to recuse myself. My wife works for Fusion GPS." He didn't do that, and people have questions. Why didn't you do that, Mr. Orr? We want to know.
And keep in mind,
why are you laughing?
Because he was demoted. He wanted that information from Fusion GPS in order to do something, because he clearly does not like President Trump. So when he was president-elect, because he didn't want to recuse himself, he had information to further this investigation to maybe delegitimize his presidency. That's my hunch.
So going back for months, a lot of people have said, well, you know, at some point Donald Trump's just going to pull the trigger and he's going to fire Robert Mueller as he gets closer and closer to something. But we're getting closer and closer to the end. He hasn't found anything. So yesterday on the South Lawn of the White House, the president was asked, what are you going to do about Mueller? He made it very clear. He's not canning him. Watch.
Quite sad to see that. So my people were very upset about it. I can't imagine there's anything on him, frankly, because, as we said, there's no collusion. There's no collusion whatsoever. But a lot of lawyers thought that was pretty sad.
Do you feel the integrity of the
No, I'm not.
They ran with this story. They used the theme on all the Sunday shows and throughout all the networks. Is he going to fire him if what happens? And everyone's going to threaten. It's going to be chaos in the streets. It's a non-story, unsourced, brought up by a unconnected Congresswoman Spires, who brings this up on a public access or a C-SPAN show, and now all of a sudden people are running with it, threatening it. It is a non-story. Are they concerned about talking about tax reform? Are they concerned about the story changing all of a sudden the Trump direction, because there is some conflicted people doing the investigating? What I also think is noteworthy, unlike 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, for the first time, Republicans are actually fighting for the president. The president does not have to do all the fighting himself. They are seeing the injustices and the inequities, and they're going to bat. When Jim Jordan hops on with Judge Jeanine from Ohio on Saturday night, he's that moved, you know, and who had no relationship with the president 9 months ago. I think they are slowly buying into their party leader.
They want to get to the bottom of it. It is about justice. You're right.
All right. Meanwhile, in other news, later this afternoon, you're going to see the President of the United States. He's going to be speaking, I believe, from the Ronald Reagan building, and he's going to be talking about a brand new America First national security strategy. Usually, it is just a document that is submitted. However, this time, the President of the United States, who has made these promises when he was out on the campaign trail, he's going to be going in front of the American public, explaining essentially what will be called the Trump Doctrine.
Protecting the homeland, promoting American prosperity, preserving peace through strength, and advancing American influence abroad.
Right. It's broken up into much more detail than that, and Michael Anton is maybe the author of this and the brain. Listen to the president on the stump and put it into policy. He joined us a short time ago.
This strategy puts more emphasis, more focus, more detail on homeland security and border security than any national security strategy ever has. And it's obvious why, because that's such an enormous challenge the United States faces, and it was one of the great themes that the president ran and won on in 2016. There still is a realm of great power competition that the United States had not been competing in effectively, partly because it refused to recognize the competition, and this strategy does recognize that.
They also bring up certain things about climate change. Yep, that's us again. Sorry, it threw me. They also bring up a couple of things. Climate change is no longer a security threat, according to this president. It is going to be about environmental stewardship. Who would think that? No more preemptive war. They're not going to subscribe to that. They also talk about revisionist nations Russia and China. Revisionist as in China making those disputed islands, Russia taking over, invading Georgia and Ukraine. So we're going to be attacking regions and actions rather than countries.
Well, the president has made it clear when he travels to other countries. When he was in China, remember, he said the Chinese president is looking out for his country. We need to start looking out for America. He was appalled that hadn't happened in the past with the Iran nuclear deal, with what's happening in North Korea. And he said the past presidents have dropped the ball. He wants to focus on putting America first and what our interests are.
That's right. So he's going to give that speech later today. And tomorrow, it looks like the House is going to start to vote on the big tax bill. It looks like the president could have a win in his column by Friday.
First time in 30 years we'll have tax reform straight ahead. The number is stunning. Keeping dreamers in the country will cost taxpayers $26 billion. But our next guest says the final tab could be even higher.
Plus, White House.
All right, the numbers are staggering. According to the CBO, legalizing 2 million illegal immigrant dreamers, that means their parents came here and they just came along because they were really young, will cost the government $26 billion over the next decade. And while activists argue legalizing them would be an economic boost, our next guest claims that's not really accurate. Here to back up those numbers, Policy Director for the Center for Immigration Studies, Jessica Vaughn. Jessica, where's this number come from?
This comes from the Congressional Budget Office, which are like accountants to Congress, and they run the numbers on the population that would be covered by this amnesty and according to the legislation, and they look at the fiscal costs. They balance out any increased revenue that the U.S. government would receive based on taxes paid versus the public assistance and other public expenses associated with legalizing this population. And when you do the math, it doesn't come out well for an amnesty.
But
they're talking about $26 billion.
Right. You're not talking about the millions that are here illegally. You're just talking about these ones that the so-called DACA, right? The dreamers that came here, brought here as young children, and they can't get legal status, correct? You're not talking about all illegal immigrants, are you?
No, but this particular piece of legislation that they analyzed, which was introduced by Senator Lindsey Graham over the summer, would legalize not only the people with DACA, but anyone who got here under the age of 18 up to 4 years ago. So that also includes a large number of the unaccompanied minors who came from Central America, as well as the people who got DACA under President Obama. So it's a much bigger population and a younger population. It also doesn't have an upward age cap on it. So lots of older illegal aliens who didn't get DACA would qualify as well. And so that's part of the reason behind this big cost. But the main problem is that this is a group of illegal aliens who are lightly educated and working mostly in unskilled jobs. We've gotten this impression that they're mostly college kids, from the activists, but the truth is that many of them lack a high school education and are going to acquire access to welfare benefits like health care.
Right. And you also talk about chain migration, too, because you could have 80,000 more people along with them if you give them the legal status. However, the legislation, they're not going to let them, the kids can't get their parents' legal status. They also say Medicaid, food stamps, educational funding, and other programs will lead to paying out a lot for them to be members of our society. But what right now is the cost? What about if they aren't legalized? What kind of burden are they on the system?
Well, if they aren't legalized, they're not getting access to food stamps, usually. In some states, they may be, but they are subject to deportation. So, or they may leave if enforcement is increased. They may decide to go home on their own. So, amnesties are always costly because they encourage more illegal immigration and they displace Americans from jobs. So if Congress is considering an amnesty for this population, we need to be real and understand it's going to be costly, but also take steps to reduce the chain migration and the future illegal immigration that could come about as a result.
Yeah, very interesting, because I hear that immigration reform is on the launch pad for early in 2018. So we're going to have you back, Jessica, to look at what's at stake. Thanks so much.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Meanwhile, 10 minutes before the bottom of the hour, Republicans on the verge of passing historic tax reform without any Democrats on board. But why? Isn't this a good thing for all Americans? Some say no. We'll debate it next.
It is 7:24 now here in New York City. We've got some quick headlines for you. First to Russia. Vladimir Putin praising President Trump for providing the intel that prevented a terror attack in St. Petersburg, Russia. The president calling our commander-in-chief after the CIA tipped Russian officials off. The White House says President Trump was pleased to help, adding, quote, both leaders agreed that this serves, that is to say, as an example of the positive things that can occur when our countries work together. And the worldwide effort to nullify President Trump's historic Jerusalem decision is intensifying today. The United Nations Security Council is expected to vote on a measure from Egypt that would void the declaration of the ancient city as Israel's capital. But the United States is expected to veto. If that happens, the proposal may go to the UN General Assembly. We'll keep you posted. All right, Ainsley.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. The Christmas present the president promised, set for delivery as Republicans prepare to end the year united on tax reform without one Democrat on board.
Tax reform bill is a disaster. It helps the wealthiest, most powerful corporations and individuals, and it hurts the middle class.
It's daylight robbery. It's in every iteration, the GOP tax scam becomes even more cowardly, outrageous, dishonest, brazen theft from middle-class families.
All right, here to weigh in on this is our panel Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins, along with Maddie Duppler, senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union. Thank you both for being with us. Michael, I'll start with you as the Democrat on the panel because we've just heard Chuck and Nancy talking about how it's terrible for the middle class. But if you look at the tax brackets, everyone's seeing a benefit. Everyone's tax bracket's going down. So how do you have that narrative? Why? That's your talking point, it seems to be, but it doesn't seem to be accurate. Is that right?
No, the middle class receives a minuscule tax deduction at the beginning. The overall tax deductions that are received go towards the top 1%. We've seen that the state tax, the exemptions raised. We've seen that the business deduction, or rather the business tax rate, is cut down to 21%. Stock market's at an all-time high. The people who need help are the middle class and the lower class, the working people. They need help to put food in their fridges, not, people who are earning millions of dollars.
I'm still not convinced. Maddie, what do you say?
Listen, Democrats are opposing this bill for the same reason Republicans are supporting it, and that's because it's going to work. The Tax Foundation is out with a new analysis just this morning saying that just next year, the average American is going to see after-tax income rise by 1.8%. The assertion that this doesn't affect middle-income families is simply not true. You look at the fact that only 30% of the country right now itemizes. That means the vast majority of Americans are just taking the standard deduction. And in this plan, the standard deduction is double. That's in addition to the tax rates coming down for people in those middle income brackets. So it's simply nonsensical to say that they won't see a tax increase. The math doesn't bear that out.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, Michael, if you look at the numbers, the average family is going to see anywhere from $1,400 to a $2,200 tax break. That's more money. That's $2,000 on average back in middle-class families' wallets. That's a lot of money. That can help send a kid to school for a semester. So if you came on, Michael, and you said, I live in New York or I live in New Jersey where taxes are really high, my taxes might not be affected, they might actually go up, I'd give you that pass. But when you come on and you say that middle-class families are going to see an increase or not be affected, I just don't buy it. When you look at the numbers and you look at the literature.
It's funny you say that, Ainsley, because I'm actually exploring a run for U.S. Senate in New Jersey for that very reason. Because as a millennial, we're watching the deficit explode. We're watching Republicans talk about reducing the state and local tax deductions. And we're looking at a president who ran on populism now basically run on corporate kickbacks. I mean, this is not the America, this is not the Republican Party that Republicans like Reagan used to stand for. Democrats may not be perfect, but at least we're actively trying to make life better for the middle class. I'm not really sure what Republicans are doing anymore.
Interesting that you're running. Maddie, maybe it's up to these local officials to lower the taxes state by state, the SALT tax, because the federal government might be lowering the brackets. But if you live in some of these high state tax or high tax states, it gets very expensive.
I absolutely hope that that will be the effect of passing federal tax reform. These states where the tax burden is extraordinarily high and politicians are inoculated from their decisions to keep taxes high by the state and local tax deduction should certainly feel pressure to be better stewards of their taxpayer dollars. And listen, the people who take the state and local tax deduction, just like a lot of other credits and deductions, are high income earners. People who are not making as much money as someone living in a high tax state like New Jersey, they're the people who are going to benefit from tax reform that allows them to increase the standard deduction. Right. We're going to go from 70% of people taking the standard deduction to probably 9 and 10. Both that simplicity and the relief granted in the plan is good for Americans.
Okay, Michael, Maddie, thank you so much for being with us. Michael, if you win, you got to lower taxes in that state. A lot of our coworkers here live there. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to both of you. All right,
thank you very much.
He beat out Roy Moore in the Alabama special election, but Doug Jones is already breaking with Democrats. What he just said that you might actually like. That's coming up next. Plus, did the media give the president a fair shake this week or this year? Anthony Scarabelli